All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's time for the Malzberg panel, and joining us today, retired Major General in the U.S. Army, founder of Stand Up America, Major General Paul E. Vallely is back with us, and LIGNET senior analyst Lisa Ruth. And welcome to both of you as the police searching the homes now of the Paris terrorists and still looking for the two. And we had a policewoman shot and killed today in what they're calling a terrorist attack in France. Let me start with you, General. Let's talk about who these brothers are. What do we know about who they are?
Well, there's several things we know. They've been living in these Islamic mini-states, if we want to call it that, in the suburbs of Paris. We understand now they have connections to Al-Qaeda, even perhaps being part of ISIS in Iraq and Syria for the senior one. So from that standpoint, they've been trained probably overseas, somewhere in the areas controlled by Al-Qaeda or ISIS, returned. And they've been planning this operation, as far as we know, probably for a year now, against the newspaper, the magazine. So this is what we're looking at now. But these controlled, Sharia-controlled, basically, many states within France, they actually ruled themselves, and the city officials will do nothing about it, or have not done anything about it. They've let this grow in London, they've let it grow out in the suburbs there, as well as in Sweden, and particularly in Holland. And I'm not sure it's reversible at this time until the politicians make a decision to do so.
Yeah, Lisa, let's talk about that. But first, I want to talk about this younger brother, the 32-year-old one, Sharif. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison back in 2008 for being part of a jihadist recruitment ring in Paris that sent fighters to join the conflict in Iraq. I mean, I know he was let out of jail early after a year and a half of a 3-year sentence, but you know, I just think that all countries, especially you know, in Western Europe, have to reevaluate how they treat people who go to these lengths. I mean, what did they think? He was rehabilitated?
Yeah, you know, to me, I've heard a lot about this as a security failure, and really this is flat out an intelligence failure. We can't deploy security resources to follow these people around all the time, but we should know things like this, and they should be monitored. This is someone who should have been considered a very high target if he was actually in jail, and as we know, while in jail, we're now hearing he was still talking to jihadists while he was there. As you said, it wasn't that he reformed while he was there. In fact, they know that he created more ties to other jihadist groups while he was there. I also heard from a colleague in the area in France this morning that the police were aware that he was continuing to try to recruit people to Iraq and Syria and potentially Yemen. This is the worst example of what's wrong with intelligence and why we so desperately need it. Security is after the fact. We need the intelligence ahead of time.
Right, and as the General pointed out, that the police in these heavily Muslim areas basically, in many instances, don't do much of anything as far as you know, trying to enforce the law. So if you're not even going to do that, then you know, then how are you going to take it up a notch when it comes to intelligence and reining in someone like him for doing what he's doing?
Absolutely. The issue here is monitoring and getting better sources, human sources. You've got to be able to provide intelligence to the decision makers, to the police, and to respond. Again, the magazine was guarded. We know that there were people there, although they didn't have weapons, which, you know, doesn't really help all that much. On the other hand, there were security forces there. Unless you can develop resources, develop sources to provide information, you're always going to be cleaning up after the fact. You're not going to be prepared, and you've got to be proactive. It's the same thing in France that it is in the United States.
Right, and General, in the last segment here, well, you know, when we come back, I want to talk about it. I want to talk about how the French military forces deployed and relocated near Paris after this attack, and what that signifies, and does it leave it vulnerable in other areas, and is this something that, you know, other terrorist groups could look at and say, this is how they're going to react. So we'll come back with part 2 of the panel with Lisa Ruth, and we'll start with General Vallely when we return right here on the Steve Malzberg Show, only on Newsmax Television.